Hello and welcome to That Tech Show, the show that reveals the magicians behind the magic that is everyday technology. Happy 50th birthday, Chris.
Happy 50th birthday to you, Sam. And happy 50th birthday to you, listener, if you've managed to make it through all 50 episodes. Or to this one, which is the 50th. So if you've listened to all previous 49 episodes.
And if you haven't, stop this one right now, go back and listen to those ones so that you've got the context that's needed. Don't worry, we'll wait. We'll wait.
Okay, welcome back.
Welcome back. Nice. Well, now that you're up to speed, we're going to do something really special and interesting on this blessed episode. We're gonna reminisce, aren't we? Would be the correct word to describe it, wouldn't it be, Chris?
Yeah, we're going to look back at some of our favourite bits, I think, some of the highlights from 49 conversations that we've had.
Yeah. I'm revealing it now. I don't want to be doing that.
49 conversations over... how long have we been recording these? I mean, it must be 2 years because
2 years.
We started like a good 6 months or so before we released our first episode.
As with many podcasts, a lot of the recording, they started of the year of 2020. And I don't know if you remember that faithful year, but it was an interesting year. But when many found themselves depressed and alone and seemingly creating podcasts.
Yeah, a huge outbreak of podcasts.
Yeah. Terrible outbreak 2020.
Yeah. There was a pandemic of podcasts as a result of the pandemic of global proportions. So, yes. But I think there can't be that many that are still going. We're 50 episodes in.
No,
we've done almost one a week, except for our little Christmas break.
Yeah. I got to say, I think we're one of the best. We're one of the best.
And
in my humble opinion.
Modesty is probably one of your better qualities, I think.
Yeah. Modesty and my mustache.
Yes, actually, that's true. You didn't have a mustache when we started.
No, I didn't have this back pain either. I've got right now, and my this broken finger or anything. I'm just falling apart. I'm a different person now.
So, did you actually break your finger?
I don't think so. I think I could just move it. It's fine. I can slowly heal it. That's the thing. That's the thing when you get old kids. Things take longer to heal, and I found that out. My 34th year. Here's my take on life, and we'll get to the clips now. But here's my short summary of life. 27. Everything starts going downhill. It's not really worth living after 27. But if you do make it after 27. 34 is when your body just starts breaking down. Life gets crap, and then your body gets crap. So I'm not really sure what the next milestone is in life, but that's my observation. Do with that information what you will.
So you're suggesting that they had it right then, the 27 Club. Well, that's Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
Was Amy Winehouse? Was he 27 as well? We got Amy Winehouse. Yeah. Jade Goody. She was 27.
Yeah, but she wasn't cool though, was she?
Well, okay.
She died of natural causes though. Well, not natural causes, but cancer is natural causes.
I think we should cut that bit out.
It's observational.
It is observational.
Cool. Well, so what we're going to do and how we're going to run this is we're going to release this as a video. I need to get used to looking at the camera, and I'm so used to kind of being on the mic to make sure I don't.
I have to apologise for my soft focus. I'm not really exactly too sure what's going on. Let's see if we can.
It's all right. It does wonders for your skin, so don't worry too much about it. Right.
Sort of Vaseline on the lens sort of vibe going on here.
Right.
That actually looks a bit better. I think I just needed to clean my lens. Well, it's definitely doing something. The camera's having a...
Yeah.
It looks like it's got a filter on, but it hasn't. Unless you've been applying filters to me.
But with that being said, should we jump into the first clip?
Yeah, absolutely.
And have a little listen to it right now. I've got a very, very technical setup right now, so bear with me. Our first clip was one of the really early episodes where I thought, we've got a banger on our hands here, because Ben Lavender not only is the chief product owner of DAZN, which is...
Oh, he's moved on from DAZN now, actually.
Not anymore, yeah.
Yeah, so this is we should catch up with where Ben is actually. Let's do that very quickly.
Yeah. So not only was at this time was he one of the big chiefs at DAZN, was he one of the founders. He also, believe it or not, invented the iPlayer, and this clip kind of goes into how he invented the iPlayer, but it was just a spectacular, really early, peaking early on that tech show, I think, on this one, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a really great episode. Just purely for the historic thing of, Ben is an expert in digital video, and I met him at Love Film, which subsequently became Amazon Prime Video, and it was amazing to get to work with, such visionaries like Ben. And the history that he has with having invented the iPlayer and spent so long shopping it around places, but we'll hear that coming up, so we'll go into it. But yeah, Ben has since moved on. I think he's actually now the group director for product management at Sky, since when we spoke to him, when he was chief product officer for DAZN, which is the global sports streaming platform that's sort of described as the Netflix for live sport. But anyway, enough of my rambling. Should we get into listening to what Ben's got to tell us?
I've been spending a lot of time in New York with a mate of mine who got me addicted on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And after sort of caning Buffy after Buffy,
caning Buffy,
her PVR over in New York, I was coming back to the UK. And there was a 6-month holdback to Buffy. And because I wanted my fix of Buffy, I started to go onto BitTorrent sites and see if I could download stuff. And after been doing this after a while, I thought this is a bit naughty and I probably shouldn't be doing this. But then I thought, hang on a sec, I'm sure there's a way to do this legitimately. And I was working for the BBC and I kind of thought, and it was over Christmas and I had this eureka moment when I was at my parents', as I said, I was on my own. I was going through a divorce, and I had this idea. It came to me when I woke up, and I just wrote it down. And I created this like PowerPoint deck, and then I got back to the BBC. First stop was I went to go and see the head of new media strategy, as he was called at the time, who to present my idea of this catch-up TV service that goes backwards for the last 7 days. And he told me that I was wasting my time. The BBC's job is to provide program support material. No one would be interested to watch TV on a computer. I should say that I didn't give up. I carried on and worked my way around the BBC. I managed to get a little bit of money so I can make a promo video and a very ropey prototype, which was complete smoke and mirrors. Eventually, it took 84 presentations before I'd actually managed to get into the executive board, which sounds bonkers. Yeah. But this was pre-YouTube, and most people thought that I was completely wasting my time. They thought the whole idea would never work. We'd never get the rights. Technically, it wouldn't work. It was just a disaster all over it as far as they thought. They treated me like an idiot savant. Eventually, so many people told me what a bad idea it was and why it would never work. I wrote down all of these questions or all these reasons why it was a bad idea, and I made sure I'd done enough research to why it was possible and it could be done. So by the time I got to the executive board, my presentation was so polished, so battle tested that there's just no way they could say no to it. And Greg Dyke, who was Director General of the BBC at the time, stood up and said, "You've saved the BBC."
I think it's a great clip, that, isn't it? I mean, it's incredible, really, to think that at this time, the people didn't see, that no one had thought of this, and that actually people didn't think that there was a future in having video on your computer.
I wonder why. It would have been, I wonder why they didn't believe in it.
I think it's like a historic thing for networks, isn't it? I mean, I think a lot of organizations don't see these things coming. They don't see digital disruption coming at all. That's what generally kills a lot of organizations. And I think it's really interesting that Greg Dyke would have had that sort of foresight, essentially, to say that you've saved the BBC, because that is entirely the direction that it's gone. And I'm amazed that the BBC has managed to largely stick to that 7-day catch-up window that they launched with, because that is mostly the case, except for some box sets, I believe, on the iPlayer. But that sets a precedent for the iPlayer sets a precedent for how we consume content now. It's incredible, and globally as well. I mean, I know that there were other things that ended up launching ahead of the iPlayer, I believe, like Channel 4 and a few other things. But part of this was because Ben was told to go and shop it around to all of these places. And it was the BBC moving so slowly with actually getting the iPlayer out of the door that meant it probably wasn't the first to market. But it was the first. It was the biggest thing when it did come to market, and it set the precedent for a hell of a long time.
Well, having looked through all these videos, these recordings, and picked the best of out, what you don't hear in this clip is how the BBC felt like they had to reveal their hand when it came to this kind of streaming on demand service, because there's a particular obligation that they have, that it's like an anti-competitive type of thing. So when you say they had to kind of shop it around a little bit, they had to actually reveal their hand and give it to the likes of ITV and Channel 4. So it must have been a really interesting time, and a very confusing, and not really knowing what's going to happen here from both like a privacy perspective and just a non-compete perspective. But the other aspect to this is which you don't hear in this clip, is what I really like, is how he sold it to some of the bigwigs at BBC. He knew that their kids, he basically got a bunch of iPads and got the kids' TV shows kind of up on on the iPad, and gave all of the stakeholders an iPad and just sort of presented this thing of, imagine, you can have your kids can just sit there and watch this thing while you're watching TV or whatever. But it's just very clever products. He's cheaper products. I wouldn't at the time at DAZN, so I wouldn't expect anything less. But very clever kind of use of looking into and understanding your users, your market essentially, and that eventually got him the BBC iPlayer into everyone's hands. So it was a pretty cool journey there.
Absolutely. So that's episode 12, where you can go back and listen to how on-demand TV and catch-up was created.
So this next clip, I think, is Rakesh. Rakesh, do you know what number episode that is? You seem to have this weird memory for number of episodes.
You're saying I have this weird memory, but I also have the website up in front of me.
Weird memory.
Well, we have to go back and look over these things. I thought Rakesh was a little early on. When did we do Rakesh?
No. He was a bit. I think he was like mid.
Oh, what he was? Yeah, episode late. 36 episode was the episode with Rakesh, which is the modern CTO and code in space. Because he describes himself as what did he describe himself as? An executive coder. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, actually, before we just jump into that one, let's look at ourselves a bit, because we just listened to one of our very first. I think that is the earliest episode we have in this selection. I don't know, but given it's so early, do you think we've changed much? I mean, first of all, I asked the listener, let us know if you think we've changed, or the show has changed for better or worse. Please let it be for better. But Chris, but do you think that our form, well, we've played around with the format, haven't we? I think, well, first of all, this podcast started out, for me, I just wanted to write a really big blog post and kind of link off to all these discussions, talking with people who make websites essentially, and I talk, we could talk about the design section, then I go off and talk about, talk to a designer and link off to that and whatever. Certainly there were, at the beginning, I had a bunch of clips that some did not make it in because the format there has changed. But since now you and I had kind of pushed forward together, what are your kind of observations on the format or anything really?
Well, I suppose I derailed your original format a little bit, didn't I, by turning it into basically an interview show? Yeah. Because we used to do the news, didn't we? I was going to say, we did the news. I mean, how many episodes of news did we do? I mean, they're not available anymore. We've taken them down, but I think we probably did...
quite a few.
Probably a good 20 or so, I think.
Well, we removed them because it then suddenly dated... We would do the news before the episode, and then it suddenly dated the episode, and then it's like, well, why would you want to listen to the news?
Old tech news,
yeah,
absolutely.
It's a nice time capsule. Don't get me wrong, but then we went through and edited out the. I think I finished doing that. edited all the news out and whatever. So, and we went through a stint of live streaming, which I don't think we particularly did captured the right market there, but we tried it. But generally, I think us as interviewers, we go into this without any script. And I was speaking to that with someone I was trying to get on the show today, saying we don't have any scripts because we're just excited nerds going into a conversation. Whereas before, I think I was keen to have questions lined up, and we would kind of have them on the side and we'd kind of go through them. But now I feel so comfortable talking to these people, and you have your strengths and I have my strengths where we kind of can lead an episode. But ultimately we don't tend to have questions lined up.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think I've probably got less prepared as we've gone on. And I think that might be a strength. I don't know. I think it's more of a trying to see where things flow. I mean, what's useful to us now is that when we book a guest, we tend to understand a little bit about where they what they can talk to us about, and also the guests are probably. I think early on we had a closer connection to the guests. Like we still have close connections with some of them, but now we're getting we're well into the recommendations now, and I think as a result, some of the guests' profiles are larger as well, which is interesting. So it puts you in a position where you can look them up and you can do some research. And it is very brief, I think, the research that we do, because it makes for a better conversation.
Yeah.
Because someone tells you something and you can go, hang on a minute, that's really interesting. Tell me about that. And I think that's what helps the conversations to sort of flow. And then we obviously benefit heavily from having our editor, Simon, tidy things up for us.
Fix our mistakes, yeah. Yeah, no, I think I was actually speaking about it. Yeah, I think I was on editing these early episodes, and getting them ready. But now we've brought on Simon, and they sound a lot better, I think, but mixed a lot better as well. I think the overall sound quality, and I think even in these early episodes I was recording with my AirPods or whatever, but anyway.
We live and learn as the microphones and quality gets better.
Yeah.
So should we get into the Rakesh clip a little bit more now? So executive coder Rakesh Ravuri, who I actually worked with at Tesco probably, I guess that might be getting on for 10 years ago as well now. It's close. Maybe 8. So yeah, I met Rakesh at Tesco, and he subsequently went on to work at Amazon, and I think he's still at Sapient now. But yeah, let's hear what he's got to tell us about
code in
space.
There was an election which happened in Belgium. So one of the candidates was basically like one of the 50 candidates who were contesting, who no one basically gave much chance of doing anything, suddenly showed a tally which says that she's the leader, right? Like they were using electronic voting machines. This is back in '93. So people were like, okay, how can she win the election, right? So they were like tallying the results. So if the number of votes counted and the number of people who voted didn't tally up, right? And the exact difference was what the number of votes this person got. So there was a massive audit to figure out, okay, how did this happen, right? So did someone hack the system? How did this happen? And they finally figured out that like one bit in the 13th register got flipped, and that is 4,000, right? Like, so you get 4,000 more votes when that bit got flipped. And they were thinking, okay, how did this bit get flipped? And then there was a lot of research saying that, okay, this cosmic rays, these are high energy particles which get released from black holes and quasars and those kind of stuff. They are passing through everything, like you and me, you and now. But when they hit a register, the register flips. And obviously, when you are there in space, you are exposed to more cosmic radiation because there's no atmosphere, there is no buildings, there's no things to stop those radiations or getting shielded. So there is no guarantee that when you say I'm writing 2 to a register, it'll still be 2 in the next step, right? So how do you write code now, right? When we are all saying that, okay, when I store something in a variable and then I read it out, I'm guaranteed that I'm going to read the same value, right? That is how the whole premise of the code is based on. So how do you write a code when you're not guaranteed about the last step? So that was the challenge, right? So to do that, what they do is like NASA does this, and I think most of the space programs do this. So they have the special boards and processors wherein the same piece of code, line by line, when a clock ticks, gets executed in 3 or 4 processes, right? And then what happens is then there is a coordinating program which says that, okay, does all 3 match? Right, and only then the next step is valid, right? Like, so if the majority of them match, and that is the value. So they are banking on the fact that the cosmic ray will not strike all these registers at the same time to make that bit flip happen in all the processors. So that is on the processor level. Same thing, you have to do it at the code level. So when you write an algorithm, you have to write an algorithm in 3 different ways, doing the same thing, but make sure that if there's a mistake in the algorithm, 2 of the algorithms will be right, 1 of them might be wrong, right? So the bugs are prevented. So that saves lives and satellites and people falling on satellites falling on people's heads. So that is the unique learning for me, right? Saying that, like, okay, everything which can go wrong can go wrong. So how do you sort of have triple redundancy? So when I say, like, okay, when you sort, like, for example, right, like, okay, I'm sorting a thing, I'll sort by bubble sort and I'll sort by quick sort. Like, so there are 2 different algorithms. So if the results are not matching, that means there was a bug in one of them, right? So like that, if you sort of do a triple redundancy, suddenly your code becomes complicated, right? Now you are doing everything 3 times, 3 different ways, and then looking at what happened.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm going to have to stop this conversation right now. Can I just jump in and can we just realize how crazy it is what you're talking about? You're talking about writing code that protects itself against black holes and prevents quantum flips happening. Like, what a world we live in. And there you go.
Your mind was totally blown there, wasn't it?
It was honestly like, it made me feel like we've made it. We've made it. Like, we're speaking to someone who basically is, held hands with a black hole or a quasar or something. You know what I mean? Like, I was just, for anyone that knows me, knows that I love space, everything to do with space. And that was, for me, was just like, I was at a fanboy moment. You could probably hear my smile as I kind of was saying all that. But it was a really, really good episode. And again, listening back through this whole entire episode, I think this is the most fun, just from trying to be a third person, this is the most fun you and I have had on an episode. There is so much in this, and Rakesh was such a joy to talk to. There's so many bangers, and I think this was the only, this was the best of an extremely good bunch this was, just, I think the reason why, I thought this one was good is it shows that as well, like how relaxed we are with our guests as well. That was quite nice. And Rakesh was just an amazing guest.
We had about 6 clips, I think, that we've whittled down to this. And actually, there was a lot of content that we cut out of this as well, just to get it down to a reasonable length, because it was such a great conversation that we had with Rakesh. And I mean, I remember him telling me that when we worked together in, like, it must be 2013, something along those sort of lines, maybe 2014. And it really has stuck with me. Like the having to write code in 3 different ways to make it resilient in space. Yeah. And one other thing that he didn't mention in this clip that he mentions in the episode is that there was some stuff that he'd written in the early 90s that had only just made it into space because of how slow it is to actually create and build spacecrafts and software and all of that sort of stuff. And so the development cycle for these things is incredibly slow, because I think at the time this was roughly when they'd just done the Mars lander. And so we were talking on our news portion of the show about them running having a Snapdragon processor and running Linux on the moon, on Mars, which was fascinating. And so we were then having this same conversation about this stuff that had been developed in the early 90s and only just made it to...
I'm listening.
It only just made it. So I think it was really, really very interesting.
I was going to say I bought this recently. Now you've said that, you've reminded me. I bought this recently. It's a t-shirt.
This translates really well to audio. Carry on.
Well, no, because we're going to release this as a video. It's a Mars 2020 Curiosity rover T-shirt. I think that's what we were.
Oh, wow.
I think that's what we were talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I got that recently, and
it's very good.
I very much like that. Like, I love space. Look at these tattoos. I love space. You know, I got space about here. Oh, that's a dinosaur.
That is a dinosaur. Yeah,
there's a spaceman. But yeah, and yeah, the only other thing I made a note to mention in this is like, yeah, I'd recently found out about this quantum bit flipping as well, because there was someone doing a Super Mario 64, good old Nintendo 64 speed run, and a quantum bit hit the Nintendo system whilst he was doing the speed bump, and it pushed him like off. You can see this on YouTube, you know, pushed him to a different place, either a hidden area or further along, so no one's been able to like beat that speed run or something. I forget the specifics, but I'd just watched this episode just a few days ago before that we recorded this, so I knew exactly what Rakesh was talking about, and I was like, holy crap, like I'm talking with someone who knows about this kind of thing, so I was very, very excited.
But it's crazy, isn't it? Because these are the things that you don't really think about, and you certainly don't. You know, the average person doesn't think about them. The average coder doesn't think about them, because it's not really something you have to even ever worry about. So it was really insightful to get to talk to somebody who has actually had to code around these sort of problems before.
It's like writing tests in your code. Barely get a chance to write tests outside of the code, let alone writing the test inside the code. And
well, when your code actually is a test,
exactly.
The code is just incredible. So, no, it was a great episode, really good episode, and definitely worth listening back to. Yeah. Okay, so next up is George Coxon, who is she was director of the Nano Foundation when we spoke to her. I think is that still her title at the moment? She just changed her title at the time.
Yeah. I think that was her new title, wasn't it?
That was her new title. So listener beware, there is mention of sexual violence in this clip, and I think this is quite profound because it was something that we certainly weren't aware of, and
true that.
Really insightful from George about the sort of things that women in tech have to put up with. Are you seeing a difference between women and men in terms of the paths that they follow to get into technology?
Well, I mean, we have put out so many job listings, and this is kind of the best way to describe it. And I think we have received one CV from a female developer in 3.5 years.
Wow.
That says it all, really. I think this all comes back and stems from education and from school, to make sure that women and girls understand that there are viable careers within technology and within the science and STEM industries, that you aren't going to feel like, you know, the one that stands out. You know, I think we've all been to a lecture or a class where you're the only person, whether it's down to gender or whether it's down to this, you feel that you stick out and therefore potentially don't feel as comfortable, or it's such a novelty. And how wonderful that you are there in the beautiful condescending manner that so many people use. I think it all definitely comes down to schooling. And I'm really excited to see a remarkable change, even in the 3.5 years that I've been at Nano. I'm seeing a lot more visible female faces around. And actually our team is nearly 50-50, which is so exciting. But there's a long way to go. You know, I still get called a whore constantly on LinkedIn, for instance.
Really?
And And a student had the gall to do that on a post of mine. So I tagged his university and went, I'm sure they're incredibly proud that you have written this on LinkedIn, this professional network that your career will be based upon. But it all comes down to the insecurities of people online, the lack of accountability, the anonymous, the anonymous side of the internet mixed with finance, and therefore but also the lack of education around trading, financial security, and all of that mixed in with a lot of insecurity of people, and how we treat each other online is, it's baffling. I mean, I've had my face deep faked onto porn and sent to various people. I've had doctored images sent on, it's It is.
Oh,
I've got
God.
an auction on 4chan of who gets to rape me first. And that's been online for 3.5 years. I have petitioned to take it down by Google, but I have no right over that. Yet they have a right over my image and I don't. So there's a lot to be done when it comes to, again, the regulation of the internet. I believe in free speech, of course, but where is the line of harassment and where is the line of abuse? And where's the line of internet accountability when people create these things?
Insane.
I think it's shocking. I mean, I was so surprised when she brought that up.
Came out of nowhere, didn't it?
It did a little bit. I mean, I because I had no idea about any of that going into it, and you know, it went from bad to worse, didn't it? You know, from talking about being called a whore on LinkedIn of all things to being deep faked onto porn is just incredible. And you know, especially for you know, I mean, Nano's a pretty big currency. You know, there's 100,000 subscribers on the Reddit board, the subreddit. But I mean, that feels quite a small community in by, you know, global standards. To have the founder be subjected to that sort of stuff.
Yeah, well, you bring up a good point. Imagine someone with, you know, gosh, many more followers, or who's way more embedded in the spotlight. You know, these sort of celebrities and things like that. It's just just because you don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. You know, I couldn't even imagine. Why would you? Why would you imagine a petition of who's going to rape someone first? Like, it's just crazy. But and you know, it's hard to decide or take from that clip whether George is numb to it or whether she's still affected by it. You know, she sort of smirked and said it with a lot of confidence, but you know, it is sort of a terrible thing, and rightly or wrongly, she does seem a bit numb to it, and it's a horrible state of affairs. But with that being said, that episode, it wasn't all doom and gloom. Like, that was another blast. That was a really good episode. I think we got on really well. And actually, I haven't told you this, but I texted Georgia yesterday, and she said to date that was one of the best podcasts she's ever done. And I think that was really, so that was really good. And it was a fun episode, and we did, and it's just a testament to some of the issues and things our guests bring to the show. You know, that we enjoy those conversations, and we kind of like to highlight. So I thank George for kind of bringing those issues to our guests' kind of peripherals as well. So that was really good. But it was a really, really good episode. Yeah,
well, I mean, we've had some great conversations with a number of women in tech, where we have talked about these sort of the misogyny in technology. And I think what's really interesting is that we all need to be more aware of it, specifically the males in tech, and we know it's a male-dominated industry. And I think if we don't stand up for women, then we are fundamentally complicit in that. And so we probably do need to take more of a stand. And to the point that we've just mentioned, you know, we talk about the Bumble founder, Whitney Wolfe Herd, because they just IPO'd, I believe, at the time. And we, you know, imagine the scale of abuse that she had to deal with. In fact, she was ousted from Tinder. I believe that's what ended up.
Yes, by a sexual harassment case or something.
Exactly. And then, you know, you talk about like the Yahoo CEO Marissa Mayer. Like, she got a whole load of shit, and I think unfortunately this is largely down to how the media portray things. So I think it's definitely time for us to take a stand as well to support more women getting involved in technology. Absolutely. Do you remember what the name of this episode was going to be? Yeah, I do. We talked about, well, it just shows our inexperience, I suppose, at the time of crypto. And we ultimately did end up speaking with Erica Stanford, I think, who is the author of Crypto Wars, who explained some stuff to us, I think, in terms of the crypto crimes and stuff. But we talked about her being a crypto queen.
Exactly. We thought it was amazing. We thought that was a banger of an episode name.
We thought we'd done a great job with the title. But yes, you can look up Crypto Queen if you're not familiar with Crypto Queen. But that is a person who absconded with many millions in crypto. And I'm not sure, have they been caught? I don't remember. I think I'm
probably not
in more detail.
But
yeah, that's one of the crypto true crimes, really, is the Crypto Queen. So yeah, you can look into that. In fact, that's on episode 28. I think we talk a little bit about that with Erica Stanford. But yeah, that certainly wasn't the right title, was it?
No.
It ended up being Small Coin and Big Impact, because actually there's a whole load of social responsibility stuff in Nano, and I think it was quite amazing, really, to talk about the great stuff that the Nano Foundation are trying to do to basically bring currency to everywhere in the world and actually sort of democratize currency. So there's some really inspiring stuff in the Nano Corporation, and definitely an episode that's worth listening to if you're interested in the democratization of money.
Absolutely. So from one powerhouse female to another, this next clip is from Alex Birtles. You're, well, I mean, a good friend of yours, huh?
Yeah, so since this episode has aired, I mean, Alex and I have known each other since 2015, 2016, something like that, working together at TalkTalk, where you were as well, Sam, so we all three knew each other, but I'm actually working as a CTO for Alex's startup now, as it happens, which is called In Good Company. So you can go to ingoodcompany.org.uk and you can see the website that I've just built for them. And then you can criticize it if you'd really like, or just sign up. Because it's all about good companies and sort of creating a TripAdvisor type product, but for good companies. But at the time when we were having this conversation with Alex, she had just come off a stint as the second in command to Dido Harding, Baroness Dido Harding, who was heading up the NHS Test and Trace. And Alex's responsibility was basically as the product owner for the NHS Test and Trace app that she was brought in to try and rectify, essentially, because it was a huge I don't know what's the word for it. It was a huge
disaster.
Get it? It was a huge fuck up, really, wasn't it? I mean, it was an absolute nightmare at the time of the government spending a huge amount of money on NHS Test and Trace, which wasn't just the app; it was everything else that went alongside it, and rolling out an app that fundamentally didn't work. And they had to scramble very, very quickly to try and put something together, which I think, well, let's hear from Alex and see what she's got to say.
And by the end, you just go, why didn't we do native? Because actually, and I think, native wasn't an option originally. There wasn't a native. And then you go, well, actually, we've got something, it's up and running, we're going to test it. And part of tech as well is that part of tech is you try. Granted, COVID is not the thing that you want to do your experiments on, but there were points where you had no choice. And then I think it's the honest answer is it didn't work as it needed to. Bits of it worked, but bits of it didn't.
Do you think it was trying to experiment too much? Because I think the first one, didn't you have to be in proximity of someone, and the proximity sensor would detect something, rather than most of the world, which went for QR codes?
The core, one of the pieces of functionality is distance proximity. So like a distance proximity sensor, so your phones talk to each other and measure the difference. And there's a time on it as well. So, how much time have I spent in close contact with you? So we in the UK, we're trying to build that ourselves, and eventually Google and Apple brought out an API that enables you to do it. And so that's what most of the rest of the world had launched, and we had been working on our own version. And that didn't we did a lot of field testing, did a pilot, and it wasn't you've got to be very sensitive and specific with it, because obviously you're informing people about whether they should self-isolate for 14 days at the time. So it needs to work really well. And ours didn't work as well it worked better on some bits, but ultimately it wasn't good enough. And there were issues with it working on both Apple and Android. And then the other thing is QR codes for checking in at venues, which is something New Zealand did. Yep. And originally Google and Apple, and actually Google and Apple hadn't integrated into their app. It was something that was developed separately in New Zealand. So we ended up and I think it was the right decision, which was to say, actually, rather than continuing to try and make it work, at some point you've just got to go, actually, we're going to stop, we're going to move on to and build a native. Some of the team remained, but we also brought in some new people. So we had people who had we actually brought in people who had particular experience of working on big consumer apps. Yeah. So like banking apps and Ocado apps. So, we have people who had really delivered like, consumer products, it's not just about the tech. You want people to take it up. Huge concerns about privacy and use of data, and managed to use particularly some of the algorithm development that had been done in the first part. But yeah, pivoted went onto a new platform, and I think it was, and it was absolutely the right thing. It was the right decision to do.
There you go.
So I think that's interesting because there's a lot of stuff said about the NHS Test and Trace app. And I think it's a little difficult because there's so many opinions about it and what works, what doesn't work, what was the right thing to do, what was the wrong thing to do. And a lot of those opinions are not based in fact necessarily. They're based on opinions and stuff that was portrayed in the media. And so I think it's actually really interesting to hear what actually happened. And what Alex is talking about there is a decision that was made to stop development on an app, throw it away and start again, and actually release a new app within about 6 weeks to 2 months, which is an incredible turnaround, actually. And it's a very brave decision to just cancel something. That often doesn't happen. And it's quite from her perspective of coming in and having a broken app and turning it into one that worked, it's quite a success story. That's certainly not what you hear in the public domain, where the government threw good money after bad and brought in a load of expensive consultants. But it's interesting to note that there's two sides to every story.
Yeah, I agree. I think this was such an enlightening episode, and I was proud actually of this episode to kind of bring this story to the forefront, because we all had our own preconceptions. I had my own preconceptions going into this episode, just from about the app and the how it was portrayed in the news and stuff. So when it finally came out, I was a bit smug. I was like, you know what? I think people need to listen to this, because she articulates it very, very clear. She's proud of her decision. She's proud of the work that she did, and I think that carries across. William now, because this is a great episode, another great episode, and William was amazing. He had did he have about 4 hours sleep jumping into this recording or something? But
I don't remember that bit.
But William I've forgotten his role, but he's at Microsoft, isn't he?
He is, yeah. So it's episode 40. It's all about global diversity and technology and the future of Microsoft. He's a advisor to the CTO at Microsoft. I believe that's his role.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, so that rings a bell. Yeah.
He shares the same name as me as well, which is also,
if you hadn't noticed.
William Addams.
And you grew very jealous of his animation that he...
yeah, what was it? Was it animation?
It was animation.
Yeah.
Some sort of automation thing. But this was a great episode. We spoke about a lot of things, but again, I think the most important aspect, I think, to this episode, obviously, was not only... what was it? SQL? Was it? No, XML? He invented a lot of stuff. He brought a lot of stuff to the table in his early years. A very, very innovative guess you could call him an inventor. I don't know. Got a lot of patents to his name.
Yeah, I think he had the patent. He has the patent for collaborative document editing. So like Google Docs, basically. And he basically his first job at Microsoft was working on the XML team, which basically became ubiquitous. Like everybody knows and uses XML. And he does seem to have a great knack for putting together these little phrases, like tequity as well, if you remember that one, which is about equity and ownership in technology, especially for blacks and underrepresented groups. So yeah, he's an interesting fella, and I think it was with him and his brother as well. They'd just been interviewed for what was it? Who'd been interviewed for?
Oh, I'm not too sure, to be honest.
That was it. So just before this as well, him and his brother Stephen, and their contributions to tech company diversity featured in the Computer History Museum.
Oh yes, I remember that. Yeah. How cool is that?
It's very, very cool.
Yeah. But I think the core focus of this episode is obviously about the diversity and what William has done for, Leap he created Leap, and Microsoft HR team inevitably ended up buying it as a program. So he's and wasn't his next mission going over to Africa and doing some tech recruitment or whatever over there as well? I think that was his next kind of big goal.
Yeah, so he promotes on his website as his vision is to help every black person interested in having a career or business in technology get into the field and prosper. And his mission is to empower blacks to build wealth and agency through equity ownership of technology companies, which is his hashtag Tequity.
Tequity, cool. Well, let's listen to the clip and then we can jump back in.
And I said, what's one of your biggest challenges? And he said, well, there's this whole diversity thing. Diversity thing. Now, in case you haven't noticed, I'm a black guy in America.
Our listeners might not know that.
Yes, I am an African American. I was born that way. And so I said, oh, diversity. Yeah, that's a thing. Keep in mind that when I joined in 98, there were 2.6% African Americans in tech roles, and I'm very specific about tech roles, not sales, not janitors, not data centers, tech roles, 2.6%. And I knew this because there was a lawsuit at the time by a sales guy who left the company and said, you guys are discriminatory. And at that time, I was like, I don't know. I was new to the company. It's like, maybe it was your situation. Who knows? But no, 2.6%. And at the time that I had this conversation with my CVP, we were at a whopping 3.6%. 20 years later,
wow.
20 years later, we had grown a whopping 1%.
And there it is.
It's a very short clip, that, but I think it's quite a powerful statement, isn't it? That I was surprised it was so low to begin with, but the fact that it had only increased by 1% in 20 years was just shocking. And you can see why William's now got that as an absolute mission to empower black people to be involved in technology and actually having a sense of ownership in technology companies.
It was another interesting point of that in that clip as well, is that how he himself was kind of ignorant to the whole diversity thing, thinking that it doesn't sort of exist because it was obviously out of his peripherals, but no, it wasn't until he spoke to someone and got those numbers that he really saw it from himself. And that seems like a real turning point for him and his mission, and obviously he cared about it, but given that he was like, I don't know, that must have been a real pivotal moment in what led on to be Leap and everything that he's doing now. Tequity, I love that.
I think it's also, there's some parallels there between William's episode and George's episode.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Because, we have had a tendency to dive into some of these social issues within technology and the tech world. And
Absolutely.
I think it's not necessarily something that you think about, or as a white male, I suppose, it's not something that you necessarily think about on a day-to-day basis. Certainly not when you start your career in technology, because there are generally, women, black people, etc. around, but it is generally majority white male. And I've personally seen some discrimination. Maybe it wasn't intentional, but like differences in pay, that I've had in people who've worked in my teams that I've corrected because it's not right. Discrimination that people have had with not wanting to hire people from certain ethnic backgrounds or certain genders and stuff like that. And I think there's a whole load of stuff in there about bias, but also unconscious bias as well. Mm-hmm. I'm not really too sure really whether the line is drawn between conscious and unconscious bias within technology, but there is certainly bias in there, because I know that even within hiring and recruiting of certain companies, people will go after people who are from red brick universities in the UK, or they will go after what's the group of universities in America that slips my mind?
I don't know. I know.
But again, you're talking Harvard, Yale,
yes.
Stanford, and you can write in if you can remember what that group is, because clearly it's just escaped me. It'll come back to me later. I'll just blurt it out, I'm sure. But you see that sort of discrimination, and actually that was something that William went on to talk about, was having that ability to help people find a second career, actually. And you shouldn't necessarily rule out people who haven't gone to one of these big universities and done computer science. They may have found their way in somewhere else. And actually there's a lot of certainly older people who didn't necessarily study computer science because they came at it from a different route, because maybe before the internet was a big thing. I've met a lot of people in that respect. I've met a lot of people who didn't go to university at all, and actually one or two of them have been the best coders that I've ever worked with. So I think William goes on to talk about how do you help people find a second career in technology, and how do we make that available as an option so that people can come into the technology industry. And specifically, the reason he's talking about that is because it's more poorly represented in more diverse areas, like black, female, etc. Because they're the ones that are generally not given the chance because of that bias, unconscious or otherwise.
This was actually another one of those episodes that I was really proud of, because it's hard to know sometimes it's hard to know what you can do to help bring these to correct or bring these things to the surface. I mean, particularly as, again, a white male, I sometimes feel like it's almost patronizing to try and do something, or it's woke or whatever, and I felt like this again. This is not the only episode we've discussed this stuff on. Mamtagira, episode 2, I think that was. Yeah. We spoke about this and her being a brown lady, and kind of her issues and what she saw. Like, again, it made me proud that we're sort of bringing these issues to the surface and hopefully educating our listeners on some of these matters and hearing it from these people in an entertaining way. We're not trying to, we know when it's important to talk about this stuff, but we talk about all the other stuff. William is just as big a nerd as you and me, and we talk out about all sorts of stuff in this episode, so it was a really good one to listen
the
back to.
Mamta one you mentioned is interesting though, because she also talks about sexuality and not being comfortable coming out in technology. And I'd worked with Mamta like 10 years ago, and I didn't know that she was gay because she never told anybody, and for her own reasons, that she would be discriminated against. But so again, episode 2, great episode to go back to. Actually started with a really good one, but straight out the blocks. But I think you're right to point out that it isn't just all social issues. I think they're really important, and we should raise them, especially as they come up, and we should think differently. I think it certainly helps me to think differently when I'm hiring people or interviewing people for work positions, you need to be conscious of these sort of things. And actually, we need to be conscious in the sort of interview techniques that we're using as well, to make sure we're not putting up barriers. And actually, all of the episodes we've spoken to about recruitment and interviews as well, those and other things that have come out, that we do need to think differently about how we interview people in technology, which again is another passion of William's. And the slices of clips that we've taken today, obviously we are talking about some of the more profound moments that have come out, but we do get to have some great conversations, some deep conversations about technology and software, hardware, as well as all of the people and the business issues, startups, all of that sort of stuff. So we have really taken in a real wide range of topics and conversations with a real range of people from all over the world as well. And we've had listeners from all over the world. So thank you, listeners, for tuning in from all over the world. It's been a pleasure to have you listen along with us to some of these great people that we've had on the show so far.
Especially Norway.
Especially Norway. Big shout out to Norway. We were in the top 5 podcasts in Norway for a while.
Absolutely. It's been a fun old journey, that tech show, and it's been such an enjoyable, and I've learned so much just by doing this podcast. On a daily basis, I'm able to say, oh yeah, I spoke to this one person and they said this, and it's nice to be able to reference some of these and be able to, suggest and reference some of these people on a day-to-day basis, and even in some respects, work with them again, because we meet them through this platform. And it's been really, really enjoyable to, see it grow from just me with my AirPods and during COVID lockdown interviewing some of my friends, to now some of the biggest names in tech coming forward to us with the likes of Intel, Google, obviously Microsoft with William, just to see it blossom. And I'm excited for the next 50.
Yeah, well, we've got a hell of a lot of those already recorded.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have. We've got some cracking episodes coming up. So, stay tuned for that. I would ask, what were the listeners, what their favourite kind of episode? It'd be interesting to know what the listeners' favourite episode was, because of course we've got the stats, what they listen to, but it doesn't necessarily tell us whether they enjoyed it or not, or whether they, had particular moments. So it'd be interesting to know if anyone's got any feedback on their favourite moments.
Absolutely. So you can do that via a review on Apple Podcasts.
Oh yes, that would be the best way, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Make sure that's a 5-star review. We will answer your reviews if you want to post on there. If you give us a wave on Twitter as well, or also Podchaser as well, because on Podchaser you can leave us a review. You can leave a review on a specific episode as well, which is nice. And yeah, also on the website. So on the website you can go on there. There's a contact form, and you can also hit hello at that tech show. Or thattech.show. Let me be more specific, and yeah, we will get back to you, and it would be great to hear from you. Also, I think it's worth covering as well that next week on the show we have Anders Andreen, the CEO of Urbanista Headphones, who will be talking to us about their new solar-powered headphones. So, from all of the stuff that we've heard today to some more cool technology, we maybe announced at the end of the 49th episode that was going to be today's episode, but we got a bit excited about having a 50th anniversary. So he will be episode 51.
50th birthday.
Absolutely. So I think that's probably it for this week. Is there any more things we need to call out, Sam?
Just one thing. We've been doing this for 50 episodes, more because they're already recorded and edited. We're just trickling them out to you. But we do this off our own back, and I think have we still got a Patreon or a Buy Me a Coffee thing?
We do have a Buy Me a Coffee, yeah.
Yeah, if you've enjoyed it, do consider leaving us a little tip. It really goes a long way to think that people are enjoying it, and it helps us, buy equipment and pay our editor, because that's all coming out of our pocket.
Oh, yes.
We don't beg for any money on every single episode, but it would be nice to it would be a good place to show your appreciation if you want to do that anonymously or whatever. So we do have
podcasts are loss making. People should know that.
But we enjoy
we do it
it
for the fun of it.
Absolutely, and we do gain knowledge and spread joy and all the rest of it. But there are financial overheads when it comes to doing this. So if you can also spare us a coffee,
spare a dime. Throw in a shekel, but also, if you're interested, Sam's putting together some new branding. So if you want some swag, then let us know, and we'll see if we can get some stuff made up. That'd be cool.
That would be cool.
Or drop us a line. Give us a like, give us a share. That helps just as much as dropping a shekel.
Right, we should leave it on shekel. See you next week.
See you next week.